I love this. You gotta love it. You have to love this. It's required. Uh, Vanity Fair has a two-part piece. They released both parts today, so it's like, why do you even divide them into part one and part two? Maybe it's length, but you're a magazine, so length usually isn't necessarily a big issue. Anyways, Eye of the Hurricane, Vanity Fair, not National Review, not the late Weekly Standard, not the American Conservative, not the Federalist website. Vanity Fair has their reporters had on the record sit-down interviews with Trump's chief of staff, Susie Wiles. It's not an altogether flattering view of the White House and how it operates and how she operates and how Trump operates. Lots of it's the kind of thing you might see in a memoir after the president's out of office, some of it. How much of it's true, how much, I don't know. I just don't know. National Review, they're doing damage control. Soon after the interviews were published, Wiles criticized Vanity Fair's coverage, and her White House colleagues rushed to her defense. The article published this morning is a disingenuously framed hit piece on me and the finest president, White House staff, and cabinet in history. But they probably believe it. Significant context was disregarded, and much of what I and the others had said about the team and the president was left down in the story. I assume after reading it, that this was done to paint an overwhelmingly chaotic and negative narrative about the president and our team. The truth is, the Trump White House has already accomplished more in 11 months than any other president has accomplished in 8 years, and that is due to the unmatched leadership and vision of President Trump, for whom I have been honored to work for the better part of a decade. Does she believe this? Or does she feel compelled to say it? If she believes it, this is a more damning condemnation of our educational system here in this country, because it's not true. It's not close to being true. You can choose a lot, for good and ill, of presidents who've accomplished more than Donald Trump. It's Wilson on the minus side, the plus side, Louisiana Purchase. That was bigger. Lots of stuff. But this is what you should expect. Ladies and gentlemen, Republicans, if you want to get, and Trump's does this too. Trump's got, what's her name? There's a reporter on the Washington Post who's always buddy with Trump. Trump talks to her all the time, and she, stabs him in the back. Sometimes deservedly so. But you talk with some of these reporters, and look, they are not conservative. They are left-leaning almost to a man, or to a woman, or to a cisgen, non-binary, something or the other. They're overwhelmingly left-leaning. They are definitely not MAGA, and they are definitely not fans of you. And I don't know what kind of Dane Bramage you had to suffer to believe that you're going to get a fair shake or a positive story out of this. Just not smart. I will say this, and I've told people this repeatedly, and this is true no matter what your politics, left or right, whack job, crazy or not. Look, if you are being interviewed by the news media, I don't care if it's the local weekly newspaper or Dateline or one of these or 48 Hours or one of these national or 60 Minutes. I don't care which one. I don't care if it's the smallest thing. I don't care if it's the biggest thing. Record it. Record the interview yourself. Because that way you've got backup when they do you dirty. Okay? So that is my advice. And that goes for even if it's a puff piece. Even if they're coming out, supposedly do a puff piece about your brand new restaurant or what, record the whole thing. Have a camera running, have your own audio, record everything. And frankly, if the journalist balks at that, if the person doing the story balks at you recording it yourself, cancel it. Because if I can't think of an honest journalist who would oppose that. Really. I certainly never would have. To give you an idea, there's a couple things. I read both parts. It's interesting. I don't know how much of it's true or not. It doesn't paint them necessarily in a great light. But there were a couple things that jumped out at me, for all the talk about, fact check, their fact-checking operation. They check every fact, blah, 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 blah. Bolshevik storytelling still gets in the reports. And so here's two examples of it. On the left, historically, the White House Chief of Staff is the president's gatekeeper, confidant, and executor of his agenda. That often means telling the president hard truths. Upon taking office, Ronald Reagan was hell-bent on reforming Social Security. James A. Baker III explained to him that cutting Social Security benefits was the third rail of American politics. Reagan pivoted to tax cuts and was ultimately reelected in a landslide. For the record, Social Security is still a problem 30 years later, 30 plus years later, 40 years later. 40 years later, it's still a problem because no one's willing to touch it because, frankly, the media and the Democrats play this game. It's the same game they're playing with the extension of the Obamacare subsidies. It's, if you change this, you're killing grandma. Just how far will Trump veer off the guardrails of democracy? That's the author of the piece speaking. That is, it shows a bias of where you're coming from, and frankly, it's kind of unnecessary. You can make the point with quotes and with reciting facts. That's just gratuitous. On the right, we have a recounting of the January 6th and Trump issuing pardons, in which 9 people ultimately died. How do you get that number? 1 person died. Ashley Babbitt, she was a protester. She was breaking through a window. And frankly, for me, it's a little questionable whether that was a good shoot, but you're never going to, kind of asking for it at a certain point. I know that's not a popular thing to say with MAGA people, but let's be honest. And I've had, I've gotten into arguments with people about this on Facebook and again, it's people who bring their politics to Facebook. Sicknick was killed by, it's like, no, he died 3 days later of a brain aneurysm or a stroke. And the doctors say that was unrelated to what happened 3 days earlier. So there's no evidence for that. But that's where they start counting. They start counting suicide, people who suicided, months later, blah, blah, blah. That's why they say ultimately died. 1 person died. It was a protester who was shot and killed by a Capitol Police officer. That's it. Honesty would require you to state that plainly and not play this game. But you're not going to get treated, Republicans, mainstream media, they're not going to treat you fairly, even if you deserve fair treatment. Again, I don't know. This is coming from a left-leaning magazine. Why Why don't you have the Federalists reporter in there? The Federalists are full on MAGA, sometimes to an overly stupid extent. But why don't you have that reporter do something like this? Talk to them. No, you pick Vanity Fair. Why? Because you still want their approval. You're never going to get their approval. You didn't get their approval when Reagan was president. You don't get it when George W. Bush is president. You don't get it. You're never getting it. They don't like you. Come to grips with it. Accept it. Move on. Jeez. Thanks for watching this clip from the Hoystory On Air broadcast. I encourage you to follow me on Substack, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I want to thank you for your support, and please feel free to watch another video or 2 or 3.